You are being lied to about your car's suspension, and it is costing you up to $2,200 every single time your vehicle goes over a pothole. Dealerships and major repair chains have a dirty little secret they keep locked away in the service bay, and today I am dragging it out into the daylight. They want you to believe that when your car starts making a clanking sound or when your steering feels a bit loose, you need an entirely new front end. They write up estimates for struts, control arms, ball joints, and steering racks, handing you a four-figure bill while looking you dead in the eye with a straight face. But here is the truth from someone who has spent 30 years turning wrenches. Up to 80% of those massive suspension estimates are complete and utter garbage. The real culprit is almost always a component so small, so cheap, and so incredibly easy to replace that a teenager could do it in a driveway with $20 and a single wrench. Why do they do this? Because Grease and Honest Diagnostics do not pay for $1 million showroom. The system is rigged to sell you massive metal assemblies instead of fixing the actual point of failure. When you walk into a service department, you are not paying for expertise. You are paying for a script designed to maximize the invoice. They rely on your fear. They know that if they mention the words steering failure or unsafe to drive, your wallet opens right up. They treat a minor mechanical hiccup like catastrophic structural damage. But you are smarter than that, and by the time we are done today, you are going to possess the exact insider knowledge needed to look a service advisor in the eye, call their bluff, and save yourself a massive amount of hard-earned cash. Let me take you back to a rainy Tuesday afternoon in my shop. A guy rolls in driving a solid, dependable commuter car. The vehicle is only a few years old, but every time he hits a speed bump or transitions onto a highway ramp, the front end sounds like a toolbox tumbling down a flight of stairs. He is white-knuckling the steering wheel, convinced his wheels are about to fall off. He drops a quote on my desk from a dealership down the road. They had diagnosed it as a failing steering rack and worn-out lower control arms. Total estimate? $1,450 before taxes. The guy was devastated, ready to trade the car in and take a massive financial hit because he simply could not afford the repair. I told him to grab a cup of coffee and give me 10 minutes. I put the car on the hoist, raised it to eye level, and grabbed my pry bar. I did not even need the tool. I grabbed a specific pencil-thin rod connected to his strut, gave it a firm shake, and there it was, the exact metallic clank he had been hearing for 3 months. The control arms were pristine. The steering rack was flawless. The entire problem was a tiny link with a worn-out rubber boot that cost less than a decent steak. I walked out, showed him the part, and fixed his car for a fraction of what he expected. The look of sheer relief on his face was priceless, but it was immediately followed by a wave of pure anger. He realized just how close he came to being absolutely taken for a ride by the corporate service machine. Here is what the manufacturers and the corporate shops will never admit to you on their fancy websites or in their glossy brochures. Cars are built incredibly well these days, but they are designed with intentional weak points. Think of your suspension like a lightning rod. When your car hits a massive bump, thousands of pounds of kinetic energy travel through the tire, up into the wheel hub, and directly into the chassis. If all of that force hit the major structural components directly, your expensive control arms and frame would bend within a year. To prevent this, engineers design tiny, sacrificial components into the system. These parts are meant to take the beating so the expensive components do not have to. They are the fuses of your automotive chassis. But when these mechanical fuses inevitably blow, the dealership does not just offer to replace the fuse. No, they try to sell you the entire electrical panel. They wrap the cheap sacrificial part inside a massive blanket of unnecessary labor and unneeded components. They tell you that because Part A is worn, you absolutely must replace Parts B, C, and D at the same time to maintain factory specifications. It is a brilliant marketing strategy masquerading as preventative maintenance. And it works on millions of helpless drivers every single year. To really understand how you are being exploited, you need to understand how your suspension actually manages movement. When you turn your steering wheel, or when your car leans into a sharp corner, the body of the vehicle wants to roll outward due to centrifugal force. To keep you from flipping over or feeling like you are driving a boat, engineers install a massive, heavy U-shaped bar of spring steel that connects the left side of your suspension to the right side. This is your sway bar, or anti-roll bar. It acts as a giant stabilizer, twisting to resist the body roll and keep your tires firmly planted on the asphalt. But a massive steel bar cannot just bolt directly to your moving wheel assemblies, or the metal-on-metal friction would tear the car apart within miles. It needs a flexible connection point. Enter the sway bar link, sometimes called a stabilizer link. This component is essentially a metal rod, usually no longer than a foot, with a small ball joint at each end enclosed in a rubber boot. One end bolts to the heavy sway bar, and the other bolts directly to your strut or control arm. Every single time your left wheel moves independently of your right wheel, every pothole, every driveway approach, every speed bump, these tiny ball joints pivot and rotate thousands of times per mile. They are the hardest working, most exposed components under your vehicle. They sit right in the firing line of road salt, mud, water, and debris. Over time, that tiny rubber boot tears. A microscopic rip is all it takes. Once the boot compromises, the factory grease washes out, and abrasive road grit gets packed inside. The smooth steel ball begins to grind against its plastic or metal socket. Within weeks, a tiny amount of play develops inside that joint. We are talking less than a millimeter of clearance. Now, a millimeter might not sound like much, but when a 2-ton vehicle is traveling at 60 miles per hour, that tiny millimeter of clearance transforms into a massive mechanical hammer. Every time the suspension cycles, the ball slaps against the walls of its socket. Because that link is bolted directly to your vehicle's frame and strut tower, the sound is amplified through the hollow metal structures of your car like an acoustic guitar body. A tiny 1 millimeter wobble sounds like a catastrophic structural failure right beneath your feet. It is terrifying to the driver, but to an unprincipled mechanic, it is the sound of a guaranteed payday. The symptoms of this failure are incredibly distinct, yet they are constantly misdiagnosed on purpose. The primary indicator is a sharp, metallic rattling or clunking noise that occurs specifically at low speeds over uneven surfaces. If you are driving down a perfectly smooth highway, the car might feel completely silent and stable. But the moment you pull into a gravel driveway, coast over a cobblestone street, or drop down off a curb, it sounds like the front end is coming apart. Another dead giveaway is a strange shifting sensation in the floorboards when you transition from a left turn to a right turn. That is the sway bar violently loading and unloading. Because the link has too much play, shops love to attribute these exact symptoms to failing struts or worn-out inner tie rods. Why? Because checking a sway bar link takes less than 30 seconds, and replacing it is incredibly simple. A quick wiggle of the rod while the suspension is loaded reveals the truth instantly. But an honest 30-second check does not look impressive on a digital vehicle inspection report sent to your smartphone. It does not justify a $150 diagnostic fee. So, they pass right over the easy answer, write up a massive estimate for the entire suspension corner, and bank on the fact that you will never crawl under the vehicle with a flashlight to verify their claims. This brings us to the ultimate question that separates the victims from the empowered car owners. How do you prove exactly what is broken without spending a single dollar at a repair shop? How do you isolate the cheap fix from the $1,000 nightmare right in your own driveway? The diagnostic process is so incredibly straightforward that anyone can perform it, and it requires absolutely no specialized mechanical training. You do not need to be a veteran technician to outsmart a dealership. You just need to know exactly where to look and what to listen for. To catch them in the act, you have to perform a highly specific, 2-step physical test that strips away the mystery and exposes the true condition of your front end. If you follow this protocol, you will know with 100% certainty whether you are dealing with a simple $20 fix or a genuine mechanical issue before you ever speak to a service advisor. First, find a safe, level surface and park the vehicle. Here's the fix most dealers won't mention, because it turns a $1,000 shop revenue fantasy into a $20 driveway victory that takes less time than watching a sitcom. They want you to believe that working on your car's suspension requires a pneumatic lift, specialized hydraulic presses, and advanced mechanical engineering degrees. It is an illusion designed to keep you dependent on the system. The reality is that replacing a sway bar link is a fundamental entry-level task that requires only a basic set of hand tools, a flat patch of ground, and about 30 minutes of your afternoon before we turn a single bolt. Let me give you the second half of that driveway diagnostic test I mentioned earlier, because this is how you lock in your proof. With the vehicle safely parked on level ground, turn the steering wheel all the way to one lock, either fully to the left or fully to the right. This opens up the space directly behind the front wheel so you can see the suspension without even taking the tire off. Slide your phone down behind the tire, turn on the flashlight, and look for that vertical metal rod. Reach your hand in and grab that rod firmly right in the middle. Give it a violent shake up and down, back and forth. If you feel even a microscopic amount of play, or if you hear a faint clicking sound when you yank on it, you have officially caught them. A healthy sway bar link should feel as solid as a structural steel beam. It should not budge, wiggle, or click under the strength of your hand. If it moves, it is dead, and you just saved yourself a $1,200 misdiagnosis. Let me walk you through the real-world math of this fix so you see exactly how the numbers break down. If you go to a dealership, they will quote you a proprietary OEM part that they mark up by 200% plus 2 hours of book time labor at an inflated hourly rate. When you handle this yourself, you walk into any local auto parts store or jump online and look for heavy-duty aftermarket options. Brands like Moog, Mevitech, or Delphi build these components to incredibly high standards, often significantly beefier than the thin parts installed on the factory assembly line. A premium, heavy-duty replacement sway bar link will cost you anywhere between $15 and $35, depending on your vehicle. That is it. For tools, you do not need anything fancy. A standard floor jack, 2 jack stands for absolute safety, a basic socket set or a set of combination wrenches, a pair of locking pliers, and a can of penetrating fluid to break through any road grime. I remember a regular customer of mine named Sarah who bought a used crossover SUV. After 6 months of ownership, the vehicle developed that textbook low-speed front-end rattle. She took it to a national tire and brake chain for an alignment, and they handed her an estimate for $950, claiming her front struts were completely blown out and leaking internal fluid. She brought the estimate to me, visibly stressed out. We walked out to the parking lot, turned her wheels to the side, and I had her reach in and shake the stabilizer link herself. She felt the massive slop in the joint instantly. I told her to head to the parts store down the block, grab a $22 replacement link, and bring it back. 20 minutes later, using nothing but a standard wrench and a socket, we had the old link off and the new one bolted down. The noise vanished completely. Her struts were completely bone dry and functional. She drove that vehicle for another 4 years without ever touching her struts, completely immune to the scam they tried to pull on her. Here is the exact step-by-step sequence to execute this repair cleanly and safely right in your own driveway. First, loosen the wheel lug nuts slightly while the car is still on the ground, then lift the front end of the vehicle using your floor jack. Never work on a car supported only by a jack. Always lower it securely onto high-quality jack stands and chock the rear wheels so the car cannot roll. Once the vehicle is secure, remove the wheel completely and set it aside. This exposes the entire suspension corner, and you will see the sway bar link bolted directly to the side of your strut housing or your lower control arm. Second, soak the upper and lower mounting nuts of the old link with a generous blast of penetrating fluid. Because these parts live out in the open elements, the exposed threads are almost always coated in a layer of rust and road salt. Let that fluid sit for 5 to 10 minutes to do its mechanical magic. Third, break the nuts loose. Now, this is where a lot of first-time DIYers get stuck because of how these links are designed. The bolt protruding from the ball joint can spin freely inside its socket. If you just put a wrench on the outer nut and start turning, the entire stud will simply spin in circles forever, and the nut will never back off. Engineers built 2 different ways to solve this problem, depending on the brand of your link. Look closely at the very tip of the threaded stud. You will usually see a recessed hexagonal hole designed to fit an Allen wrench or a Torx bit. You insert the proper bit into the end of the stud to hold it completely stationary, and then you use an open-ended combination wrench to back the nut off around it. Alternatively, some links have a flat spot machined onto the backside of the stud, right where it meets the rubber boot. If your vehicle has this style, you simply slide a thin open-ended wrench or a pair of locking pliers onto those rear flats to lock the stud in place. Then use your socket wrench on the front nut to break it free. Fourth, once both the top and bottom nut sets are removed, slide the old link out of its mounting brackets. If the suspension is binding slightly and the link feels trapped, simply place your floor jack under the lower control arm and lift it an inch or two very gently. This realigns the geometry and relieves the tension on the sway bar, allowing the old link to slide right out of the holes without any resistance. Fifth, take your new premium link and slide it into place. Thread the new mounting nuts on by hand to ensure they do not cross-thread. Using your wrenches, torque the nuts down tightly to your vehicle's factory specifications, which is usually around 35 to 45 foot-pounds of torque for most standard passenger cars and SUVs. Pop the wheel back on, hand-tighten your lug nuts, lower the car off the jack stands, and perform your final torque on the wheel lugs. It is that simple. You are officially done. However, before you run out to your garage, you must understand a couple of critical warnings and common misconceptions that trip up inexperienced mechanics and cause this simple fix to fail prematurely. The biggest mistake you can make is replacing only one side of the vehicle. Sway bar links work in perfect mechanical harmony with each other. If the passenger side link has completely worn out due to mileage and road debris, the driver's side link has experienced the exact same amount of stress and environmental exposure. If you replace only the broken side, the slight play in the older, aging link on the opposite side will cause uneven loading across the stabilizer bar. This imbalance will rapidly accelerate wear on your brand new part, and you will find yourself right back under the car, fixing the exact same noise within a few months. Always buy them in pairs and always replace both sides at the same time to ensure a balanced, factory-fresh ride. The second major pitfall involves lubrication. Many high-quality aftermarket links come equipped with a small brass grease fitting, called a Zerk fitting, screwed into the back of the ball socket. Factory links are typically sealed units that cannot be serviced, but premium aftermarket links are often greasable if your new parts feature these fittings. They are shipped from the factory with only a minimal amount of storage grease inside to prevent rust while sitting on a warehouse shelf. They are not fully lubricated for road use. You must attach a manual grease gun to that fitting and pump high-quality chassis grease into the joint until you see the rubber boot swell up slightly. If you run a greasable link completely bone dry right out of the box, the steel ball will incinerate its internal lining within a few thousand miles, completely destroying your new investment. Finally, never fall for the common misconception that a clicking sway bar link requires an immediate wheel alignment after the repair is complete. Dealership service advisors love to tack on an extra $100 alignment fee every single time they touch any component under the vehicle. But a stabilizer link does not dictate or alter your vehicle's tow, camber, or caster settings. It purely manages body roll. It has absolutely zero impact on your tire wear or steering tracking geometry. When you swap this part out, your alignment parameters remain perfectly untouched. You bolt it in, track your savings, and drive away without paying the shop a single extra dime for an alignment you do not need. When you take control of this repair and refuse to let the dealership asset strip your bank account, the long-term benefits go infinitely deeper than just silencing a frustrating rattle under your floorboards. By installing heavy-duty, premium stabilizer links and maintaining them yourself, you are actively extending the structural lifespan of your entire front suspension assembly. Think about the mechanical chain reaction we are breaking here. When you let a worn-out, clicking link hammer away over every pothole, that unregulated kinetic energy does not just disappear. It travels directly into your expensive McPherson struts, your aluminum steering knuckles, and your rubber control arm bushings. It slowly vibrates your wheel bearings to an early death and puts unnecessary stress on your steering rack gear teeth. By restoring a crisp, tight, zero-play connection between your chassis and your anti-roll bar. You absorb those micro-impacts exactly where the engineers intended. You protect components that cost hundreds of dollars to buy and hours to install, ensuring your car tracks straight, tight, and true for an extra 50 to 80,000 miles down the road beyond the hardware protection. What you are genuinely gaining is an immediate restoration of your vehicle's factory handling dynamics, safety profiles, and emergency maneuvering capabilities. When a stabilizer link has severe mechanical play, your anti-roll bar suffers a dangerous delay in engagement. When you suddenly have to swerve to avoid debris on the highway, or when you take a sharp curve on a wet mountain road, the body of your car will lean excessively before the sway bar finally catches and begins to counter the weight transfer. That split-second delay upsets the vehicle's center of gravity, confuses your electronic stability control sensors, and reduces the traction available to your inside tires. By locking down that connection with a beefy, premium link, your vehicle responds instantly to your steering inputs. The chassis stays flat, predictable, and firmly planted, giving you back the precise control you need when road conditions turn hostile. To maximize this mechanical advantage and ensure you never have to deal with an unexpected suspension failure again, you need to integrate a few simple, zero-cost inspection habits into your regular vehicle maintenance routine. The absolute best time to do this is during your routine engine oil changes, when you already have the tools out and the vehicle partially lifted or the wheels turned. Make it an absolute rule to perform a visual and physical health check on your front and rear suspension corners every 5,000 miles. Grab your flashlight and inspect those rubber boots on the sway bar links, tie rod ends, and ball joints. You are hunting for any signs of wetness, greasy tearing, or cracking. The moment a boot splits, the countdown timer to failure begins. If you installed greasable aftermarket links with those brass Zerk fittings during your repair, your 5,000-mile oil change is the exact moment you hook up your grease gun and give each joint 1 or 2 clean pumps of synthetic chassis grease. This simple 30-second habit flushes out any microscopic moisture or road dust that crept past the seals and replaces it with fresh, high-boundary lubricant. It turns a part that typically fails every few years into a permanent, bulletproof component that will easily outlast the vehicle itself while you are under there with your hands on the suspension. Always take 10 seconds to perform a comprehensive shake test on the rest of your front-end components to catch other dealership upsell items before they can grow into real problems. Grab the tire at the 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock positions and shake it vigorously back and forth. Any shifting or metallic clicking there points toward a failing wheel bearing or a worn upper ball joint. Then, reposition your hands to the 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock positions and repeat the movement. Play in this direction signals a worn inner or outer steering tie rod. Catching these minor tolerances early in the comfort of your own driveway means you can order the cheap parts online at your leisure, completely bypassing the panicked emergency scenario that dealerships rely on to inflate their service invoices. Now, as your mentor who is always going to give you the unvarnished truth, I need to caution you about a few potential trade-offs and structural realties when you transition from flimsy factory parts to ultra-stiff, heavy-duty aftermarket suspension components. When you install thick, heavy-duty steel or solid billet stabilizer links, you are intentionally choosing maximum durability and razor-sharp handling responsiveness. However, because these performance-oriented components have zero internal flex and use denser polyurethane or heavy metal sockets instead of soft plastic inserts, they transfer a tiny fraction more road texture directly into the vehicle's frame. You might notice a very slight increase in minor cabin vibration or a crisper thud when tracking over aggressive concrete expansion joints on the highway. This is not a mechanical defect. It is a direct physical consequence of a tighter, more performance-focused suspension setup. For 99% of drivers, the massive increase in handling precision and the complete elimination of premature part failure make this incredibly minor trade-off completely worth it. But it is a reality you should expect. You also need to understand that upgrading your stabilizer links highlights the condition of your sway bar bushings, the thick rubber blocks that hold the main bar to your car's subframe. When you tighten up the outer links, the giant steel bar begins to twist with its full design force. If your subframe bushings are old, dried out, or compressed, that newly recovered structural force can cause the main bar to squeak inside its mounts when navigating large speed bumps in freezing weather. If you experience this after your link repair, do not panic and assume you did something wrong. It simply means your main bar bushings are crying out for a quick shot of silicone lubricant or a simple $15 replacement. It is just another step in mastering your own machine. Look at what you have accomplished here by simply shifting your mindset from a passive consumer to an active investigator. You started with a terrifying four-figure repair estimate designed to exploit your lack of knowledge and force you into submission. You chose to ask questions, to look behind the wheel for yourself, and to discover the cheap mechanical reality hidden behind the corporate smoke and mirrors. You took a toolbox, spent $20 on a sacrificial part, and solved a major drivability symptom with your own two hands in a fraction of an hour. That is real mechanical empowerment. That is the exact moment you break free from the predatory dealership loop and realize that a car is not a magical, incomprehensible black box. It is a logical system of bolts, grease, and metal that you are completely capable of mastering. Take this hard-earned confidence and apply it to every single aspect of your vehicle ownership. The next time a service advisor hands you a multi-page inspection report filled with red warning indicators and generic phrases about critical safety failures, do not let your heart sink. Smile, take the paper, walk out to your driveway, and verify the claims yourself. Check the boots, shake the rods, look for the leaks, and demand to see the physical proof before you ever sign an authorization line. You have the tools, you have the hands. And now you have the industry secrets that keep your money exactly where it belongs, in your pocket. Keep turning wrenches, keep asking the hard questions, and stay on the driver's side of the system.